decade, I built something entirely new beneath the radar of my old life. Offshore accounts, blind trusts, and shell corporations, each with layers of plausible deniability. The money came from projects no one wanted to look too closely at, liquidation of dormant assets. Stock options buried in forgotten subsidiaries. I hid everything in plain sight, disguised as failures and write-offs. My accountant, a quiet man named Suresh who had as much to lose as I did, helped me spin the web. Together, we created an invisible empire that fed itself, untouchable and untraceable. Why do you need all this secrecy? If you want to disappear, there are easier ways. I'm not disappearing, I said. I'm dividing. He frowned. Between what? Between the life I had, I said, and the one I still deserve. Eva never asked where the money came from. She was content with the quiet life I built for her, a small house by the sea. Daniel's schooling paid for, vacations when we could afford them. But I watched her, the way she smiled, when Daniel called me Dad for the first time. That single word shattered whatever remained of my old loyalty. For the first time, I understood what love meant when it wasn't purchased or inherited, it was earned in the small silences of ordinary living. Then came the diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer. I didn't tell either family right away. I went about my days as usual: meetings, paperwork, long walks by the water with Eva. When the pain grew too much to ignore, I set things in motion. I sold the last of my visible assets, liquidated the estate under the guise of paying debts, and staged the collapse. Bankruptcy filings, frozen accounts, lawsuits, all fabricated with surgical precision. My old family saw exactly what I wanted them to see: the fall of a foolish old man who'd played one gamble too many. The whisper spread fast. He's lost everything. He owes millions. He's finished. They never realized that the debts were fake, the lawsuits orchestrated. Every cent that vanished had already been moved offshore, wrapped in layers of anonymity, and placed under names no one would connect to mine. $30 million clean, quiet, and invisible. And all of it waiting for Eva and Daniel, who had no idea they were inheriting the fortune of a ghost. My final days were spent in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and regret. Margaret visited once, wearing her usual mask of politeness. "You could have told us," she said flatly. "We could have helped." "With what?" I asked. "My conscience." Her silence told me everything. She was already calculating the aftermath. When she left, she didn't say goodbye. "Eva comes. I'm the next Steve Myhoen something. You don't have to worry about us," she whispered. "We'll be fine." "I know," I said, and smiled, because I had made sure of it. "But don't tell Daniel anything yet." "Not until the time comes." She nodded through tears, and I gave her a small envelope. Inside was a key, nothing more. The key to a locker in a Swiss bank under the name of a trust she'd never heard of. "When the papers say I'm gone," I said, "go to this address. Tell them you remive, looked few." "But Richard, they'll know you weren't. They'll know enough," I said softly. "And what they don't know doesn't matter anymore." The next morning, I was gone. "Peacefully," they said. The papers ran, small obituaries, noting the once respected businessman who left behind nothing but debt and disappointment. My children fought over the scraps. Margaret sold the house. Alex sued for the remnants of the trust. Carolyn filed for emotional damages. They all thought they were cleaning up my mess. None of them realized they were playing roles I'd written for them long before. And somewhere across the ocean, in a quiet Swiss bank, Eva opened that locker. Inside, she found the documents, the access codes, and the letter I'd written by hand. A single line on the first page. "They thought I died in debt, but everything I ever truly owned was meant for you." Eva didn't cry when she opened the letter. Not right away. She just stared at it, her hands trembling slightly as her eyes traced the handwriting she knew too well steady. Deliberate, the way Richard used to sign checks or leave notes on the kitchen counter before dawn. The room around her was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. A bank officer stood a few feet away, polite but wary, pretending not to notice her reaction. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. "Is this real?" The officer hesitated. "Mrs. Collins, the trust has been active for over 12 years. Your name was added as a beneficiary 5 years ago, with full authorization. Everything here is legitimate. Mrs. Collins, the name still felt foreign. For years, she'd been Eva Miller, the woman who ran the little flower shop on 8th and Pine, whose husband was away on business too often. But Richard Collins, no, Richard Hale, had always been more than he seemed. And as she looked down at the documents spread before her trust deeds, offshore accounts, land titles, even corporate shares, she began to understand just how much he'd hidden. 30 million, she murmured, still not believing it. He said he'd saved something for Daniel. But it's all yours, the officer interrupted softly. And your son's, by legal extension. Mr. Hale's instructions were explicit. Everything is under your control now. Eva blinked rapidly, unable to focus. Holly, the officer paused. You didn't know his real name? For a moment, the world tilted. The truth settled like a storm cloud in her chest. Richard Collins was a lie. The man who had cooked Sunday breakfast, who patched the roof himself, who taught Daniel how to ride a bike on that gravel road by the shore. He wasn't Richard Collins at all. He was Richard Holley, the disgraced businessman everyone in the newspapers had mocked for dying penniless. And yet, sitting there in that quiet Zurich office, Eva realized that he'd left her the kind of wealth people killed for. When she stepped out of the bank, the light hit her face in thin, fractured beams through the clouds. Zurich streets were slick with rain. She tucked the envelope close to her chest and walked, almost mechanically, down the narrow cobblestone path until she reached the lakefront. She sat there for a long time, staring at the water, feeling both rich and ruined at once. Daniel would need to know, but not yet. Threemer, Bucking men. The world had already forgotten Richard Holley. His estate auction had come and gone. His debt settled through liquidation, and his children were moving on, though not gracefully. Alex had lost his position in the company. Caroline's marriage was falling apart under the weight of unpaid taxes and public embarrassment. Their father's name had become a warning in business circles. The man who flew too close to his own pride and fell without a net, Eva. Read about them occasionally when the tabloids resurfaced the story, but she never reached out. She told Daniel only that Richard had left something for them, a small inheritance from an old friend. The boy, now 27 and running a small engineering firm, never questioned it. Until the day someone came looking. It started with a call from a number Eva didn't recognize. Monsieur Collins, a male voice said. The tone was formal, but not in kind. My name is Michael Holley. There was a pause, careful, measured. I'm Richard's son. Ava's blood ran cold. I think you have the wrong number, she said quietly. I don't, he replied. You're listed as the secondary contact in one of my father's trust documents, a Swiss account. I only found out about it last week, when the probate attorneys sent over the residual filings. She couldn't breathe. What do you want? I want to know the truth, he said simply. About him. About you. Ava's eyes flicked toward the window, to the ocean outside. There's nothing left to say. There's 30 million reasons to say something, he countered. His tone was still calm, but there was an edge to it now. Keg. Mrs. Collins, or whatever name you prefer, I'm not here to take anything. I just need to understand why he left us in ruins while you... He stopped himself. While I what? She said. While you got everything. Eva closed her eyes. The silence between them stretched thin. Meet me, he said finally. 1 hour. Calf Brannan, downtown Portland. If you don't show out up. The cafe was quiet that afternoon, the kind of place Richard would have liked dim lights. The faint hum of jazz, old wooden floors that creaked underfoot. Michael Holley looked just like his father once had, tall, dark-eyed, a presence that filled the room without effort. But there was a sharpness to him that Richard never had, the kind born of betrayal. Eva sat opposite him, her fingers wrapped tightly around her cup. I was 12, Michael began, when he stopped showing up to my soccer games. 14 when he stopped calling. 21 when he vanished completely. Where tutted his mind. And when he died, when they said he was broke, I thought it was karma. Eva said nothing. But then, he continued, leaning forward, I see your name, Eva Collins. And this trust that he built, in secret. So tell me, who are you to him? She looked him in the eye. The woman he loved when he stopped being the man you knew. Michael sat back, stunned. "Elle told me." Once, she went on, that his biggest mistake was believing money could fix people. So he gave it to the ones who didn't ask for it, and you think that makes it right? Michael's voice cracked anger and grief tangled together. "He left us with nothing, Eva, nothing. While I had him," she interrupted sharply. "Not his money, him, until the end." That silenced him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, rain began to fall soft, persistent. The same kind of rain that had started everything all those years ago. "Finally," Michael whispered, "he really loved you, didn't he?" Ava's lips trembled. "Enough to die a villain, in your eyes." That night, Michael didn't go home. He sat in his car outside the cafe, turning the key Richard had left her over and over in his hand. The same key she'd given him. After their conversation, almost impulsively, as if she wanted to share the burden. "There's more," she'd said. "He planned for this. I think he wanted you to find it." Michael didn't believe in ghosts. But when he turned the key in his palm, he swore he could almost hear his father's voice, steady, deliberate. "Find the truth, son, but not where you think it lies." And for the first time, he realized his father's story wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Michael flew to Geneva. 3 days later, his father's key tucked inside the inner pocket of his coat. He didn't tell anyone, not his mother, not his sister. Not even the family lawyers who were still untangling the last threads of what they thought was a bankrupt estate. He didn't trust any of them. And truthfully, he wasn't sure if he trusted himself either. The Instrugiven of Banco F. La Suisse. Rue des Bains, locker number 3147. But as he stood inside that sterile, marble-tiled lobby with its scent of polished oak and discretion, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into his father's shadow one he'd never quite escaped. The clerk at the counter, a middle-aged man with silver-rimmed glasses, examined the key with practiced indifference. "Locker 3147, he confirmed. Identification." Michael slid his passport across the counter. The man's eyes flicked between the ID and the key before, softening just slightly. Monsieur Holly, we've been expecting someone." Expecting. The word settled uneasily in Michael's stomach. "What do you mean?" The man smiled politely. "Mr. Holly left specific instructions in his file. That, should anyone bearing this key present themselves and be able to verify their identity as his son, we are to grant them access to a secondary deposit." "Secondary?" "Oui, monsieur. The clerk motioned for him to follow. Your father was thorough. They led him down a narrow corridor, lined with private vaults, the air cool and heavy, with silence. When they stopped at locker 3147, the clerk inserted the key into a secondary mechanism and stepped back. "Take your time, Mr. Holly. When you are finished, please ring the bell." The door clicked open with a soft metallic sigh. Inside the locker was a black leather briefcase, sealed with a brass clasp. Michael lifted it carefully, feeling the weight of it too light for cash, too dense for mere papers. His pulse quickened as he laid it on the small desk provided and flipped it open. Inside was a single manila envelope marked for my son. Beneath it, a hard drive wrapped in linen, a few photographs, and what looked like a worn notebook with frayed edges. He opened the envelope first. "Michael, if you're reading this, it means you've already learned part of the truth. I didn't die poor. I died with the only wealth that ever mattered: control. What you and your sister inherited were ashes, yes, but they were ashes I created deliberately. You'll understand why soon enough. You see, I learned long ago that money doesn't just buy things, it buys silence. It buries guilt, redefines history, and lets men rewrite their sins. I used that silence to protect a woman and a boy who never asked me for anything. But I also used it to protect you, even if you'll never believe that. There are things your mother and the company don't know, things they can't ever know. If they did, our family's name wouldn't just fall. It would be erased. What I left behind in this case will tell you everything. But bewarned once, can see it, and once you act, there's no undoing it. Your mother will never forgive me. Maybe you shouldn't either. But did she tell you why open notebook? Fate Michael. Set the letter down and stared at it for a long while. the words sinking into him like slow poison. The handwriting was unmistakably his father's, measured, forceful, a man used to giving orders. But there was something else there too, a tremor in the pen strokes, a quiet vulnerability he'd never seen before. He reached for the notebook. Its pages were yellowed, filled with tight, slanted handwriting, and a few newspaper clippings glued to the edges. The first page was dated June 14th, 1997. It started with the offshore contracts. 3 projects off the books. Underhole, international, maritime, not legitimate. Not even close. Someone in procurement was funneling money through shell vendors to fund private shipments. I didn't ask questions at first. I should have. When I did, I realized the shipments weren't cargo, they were people. Refugees, debtors, women promised work in Europe, trafficked under our family's flag. Michael froze. The words blurred as he read on. His father's handwriting tightened, growing angrier, shakier. When I confronted your uncle, he laughed. Said the margins were worth it. Said no one would ever trace it back to us. I told him I'd shut it down. He told me I'd regret it. 2 months later, the auditors discovered my offshore losses. The board turned. My reputation burned overnight. And that, my son, is how I became the bankrupt man you read about. Michael's stomach churned. He flipped to another page, clippings about maritime investigations. Missing vessels, vague government inquiries that had all gone nowhere. Then, photographs grainy, shots of containers being offloaded in shadowy docks. His uncle's signature on invoices, company logos blurred under false names, and then one final entry. If you're reading this, Michael, I need you to do what I couldn't. Find the name Blackstream Holdings. It's the shell your uncle used to hide the profits. It still exists buried deep, laundering through legitimate fronts. The men behind it are dangerous. They think I'm gone. They don't know you exist in this equation. Use that. I left the map on the drive. But once you open it, they'll know someone's looking. Be careful, son. Trust no one, not even your sister. Michael's hands were trembling by the time he closed the notebook. His reflection in the polished vault wall looked like a stranger's haunted eyes, jaw clenched tight. The man who had come to find out why his father hid a fortune now understood that the money wasn't stolen, it was preserved. It was blood money, cleaned and locked away not for greed, but for penance. He glanced at the hard drive lying beneath the papers. Its label simply read, Blackstream, clearly on the door, Monsieur is right. Michael cleared his throat, forcing calm into his voice. Yes, I'll be just a minute. When the door closed again, he exhaled, shakily, and whispered to himself, What the hell were you into? Dad! He slipped the notebook and drive into his bag and left the vault. But as he stepped into the lobby, he noticed something that made his pulse skip to men in dark suits standing near the entrance. Pretending to read newspapers but watching him too closely. They weren't bankers. He didn't need to turn twice to know what his Fatim on the Med Drive. Someone knew, and they were already coming for him. Michael didn't run, not at first. Running would have drawn attention, and the 2 men at the entrance were professionals. He could tell by their posture, relaxed but ready, shoulders square, eyes never still for long. They weren't random suits. They were waiting. He adjusted his coat collar and moved toward the side exit instead of the front, his heart pounding steadily, deliberately, as if syncing to the rhythm of every step. The clerk at the counter nodded politely as he passed, none the wiser. Outside, Geneva's winter air hit him like glass crisp, sharp and alive with tension. He walked quickly, but not too quickly, down Rue des Bains, his shoes striking against wet pavement. He glanced once over his shoulder. One of the men had exited the bank, scanning the street. The other was pretending to make a call. Dad, what the hell did you drag me into? He turned down a narrow side street, then another. The city's calm elegance suddenly felt suffocating. His breath came out in small bursts, white against the dim light. When he reached a row of parked cars, he slipped into a small cafe, ducked behind a pillar, and looked out the window. The men walked past slowly, methodically, then split in opposite directions. He sat there for nearly 15 minutes before he moved again. His hotel wasn't far, A quiet boutique, spot overlooking the rain. He checked the lobby mirror twice before heading up to his room. Once inside, he locked the door, pulled the curtain shut, and set the briefcase and notebook on the desk. For a long while, he just stared at the hard drive. Every instinct told him to walk away, to leave it there, to catch a flight home, to let the past stay buried. But the same stubbornness that had once made him fight for his father's approval wouldn't let him. Richard Holley had lived and died under layers of deceit. Michael couldn't be the man who ignored the truth once it had found him. He opened his laptop, connected the drive, and waited. The screen blinked. A single folder appeared. Inside it were files. All did but the bottom one file where I clicked it. The footage was grainy, shot on what looked like an old camcorder. Richard sat at a desk in a dimly lit room. He looked younger, but tired, his eyes heavy with years of secrets. If you're watching this, son, the recording began, it means I failed to fix what I started. Michael leaned closer. I didn't tell anyone, because I couldn't trust anyone, not your mother, not the board, not the police. Blackstream isn't just a shell company, it's an entire network. Offshore banking, arms transfers, and human cargo, routes disguised as trade shipments. They used our company to build the foundation, then bled it dry, once I tried to stop it. Your uncle, the man you grew up calling family, has been laundering through them for years. And he's not alone. Richard paused, breathing heavily. They killed people, Michael, journalists, whistleblowers, and when I got too close, they made sure I disappeared publicly long before my heart ever stopped. Everything they said about me, the death scandals was a cover, Michael Froze. Richard evidence. Financial records, transaction logs. They're buried within this drive, but I couldn't risk uploading or sending them. They're hidden inside the encryption, bound to a specific pattern only I knew. If you're smart enough to unlock it, you'll know what to do next. He reached for something off camera. His voice dropped, almost to a whisper. Don't trust anyone who comes asking about me. They already know you exist. If they can't find the money, they'll come for you. The video ended. Michael sat there, frozen. The silence in the room was deafening. His father wasn't just running from debt, he'd been hunted. Everything the world believed about Richard Holley was a lie. And now, the lies were circling back. He checked the time. Jumps 11:47 menit under hits the window pane. He shut the laptop, tucked the drive back into its wrapping, and paced the room. And then he detected from a new Holley. Maybe she knew more than she had said. He grabbed his phone. One missed call. Unknown number. Then a not. And another. His pulse spiked. The last voicemail was only a few seconds long, static at first, then a faint voice. Stop looking. The line went dead. Michael's skin went cold. He dropped the phone on the table and rushed to the door, checking the peephole. The hallway was empty. He turned back to the desk and froze. The briefcase was open. He hadn't touched it since closing it earlier. Inside, where the notebook had been, there was only a single photograph, now one he had never seen before. It showed his father shaking hands with a man in a dark suit. The background was a cargo dock, a ship behind them with the name Valeria painted across the hull. On the back of the photo, written in his father's hand, "Find this ship. It's where it all began." Michael exhaled shakily. Geneva, Zurich, now ports. He whispered to himself, trying to piece it together. Blackstream wasn't just about money, it was about movement. His laptop beeped. A new window had opened on the screen, unprompted. A string of flashdrivani. Then a image appeared. "We say you?" He yanked the power cord out of the wall and slammed the laptop shut. His heart was pounding so violently he could hear it in his ears. He grabbed the drive, the photograph, his passport, and bolted out the back exit of the hotel. The city was eerily quiet as he stepped into the night. The rain had stopped, but the streets glistened under the dim orange glow of the streetlights. Every passing car made him flinch. Walked fast, keeping to the alleys. He didn't have a plan, only an instinct to survive long enough to understand what his father had left behind. As he crossed a small bridge over the rain, his phone buzzed again. A text this time. No number. No sender. Go to Marseille. Dock. 47. Midnight. You'll find the Valeria. Michael's breath caught in his throat. No one else could have known that name except whoever had been watching him since the bank. And yet, something in him, part fear, part grim curiosity, knew he had no choice. He typed a single reply. "Who are you?" A pause. Then 3 words appeared. "Someone your father saved." Zenext. Morning. Michael was gone from Geneva before the sun had even burned through the clouds. He took the first train south, not trusting planes or hotels anymore, not after what he'd seen on that screen. The message, "We see you," still haunted him, echoing every time he blinked. The rhythm of the train, the muffled chatter of strangers, even the flicker of lights through the window, all of it made him feel watched. He clutched his coat tighter, the hard drive wrapped in layers of fabric and tucked deep in his bag. The photograph of Valeria he'd folded into his wallet, where he could feel its presence against his chest like a heartbeat. As the train sped along the French countryside, he thought about the last words his father had spoken on that recording, "If you're smart enough to unlock it." There had been something almost pleading in his tone. Not a command, but a desperate trust. Michael had grown up resenting the man, trying to prove he wasn't the same. Now he realized he might have to become exactly that kind of man to survive. When the train finally pulled into Marseille late that evening, the sky was painted in dark streaks of violet and Rust. The port city was alive with noise, honking, shouting, the metallic groan of cranes shifting containers onto freighters. The air smelled of salt and oil, the kind of smell that clung to the lungs. Michael walked toward than travelers. Doc 47, the Ted said. He passed numbered signs 41, 43, 45 and then stopped. There it was. The Valeria. A massive container vessel, rust creeping across its hull, like scars, the name barely legible under layers of chipped paint. It looked abandoned, forgotten, a floating ghost of something that had once mattered. A single yellow light flickered near the gangway. Michael's phone buzzed again. Another text. "Don't speak to anyone. Come alone. Inside the cargo hold. You'll see a red door." His pulse hammered in his throat. He hesitated for half a second, just long enough to realize he couldn't turn back. He climbed the gangway, boots thudding softly against the metal. The ship moaned under its own weight, as if remembering what it used to carry. Inside, the air was damp and stale. The echo of his footsteps bounced against the steel walls as he made his way through narrow corridors lit by failing bulbs. Somewhere far below, water dripped rhythmically. The place felt like a tomb. And then he saw it, a red door, just like the message had said. He reached out and pushed it open. The room beyond was small, dimly lit by a single hanging lamp. It smelled faintly of diesel and rust. A figure sat at a table, their face shadowed beneath the hood of a worn jacket. Michael Halley, the voice said, female, calm, low, with a trace of something European Eastern, maybe. "You made it." He stayed by the doorway. "You're the one who's been texting me." She nodded. "Your father helped me once. A long time ago." Michael's grip tightened on the strap of his bag. "You said he saved you. From what?" She leaned forward, and the light caught her face, mid-30s, sharp eyes, a scar that traced from her temple to her jaw. "From Blackstream," she said. "From your uncle." The words hung heavy in the air. "My name is Nadia. I used to work on one of the ships trafficking routes your family's company covered for years without anyone noticing. When your father found out, he stopped one of the shipments. Blew the whistle internally. It should have ended there, but it didn't," Michael said quietly. "No," Nadia replied. "They made sure he was ruined instead. That's how Blackstream works. They don't erase people. They destroy them publicly. Your father was the only one who figured out how to beat them at their own game, by pretending to lose everything," Michael murmured. "Exactly." She stood, pulling a metal case from beneath the table. "He didn't just hide money, Michael. He hid evidence proof of everything they did. He gave me part of it years ago and told me to wait, to give it to his son when the time came." She opened the case. Inside were several hard drives, old and dusty, and a thick stack of documents stamped with corporate seals. Shipping manifests, wire transfers, forged passports, names, locations. "It's all here." Michael stared at them. "Then why didn't you go public?" "Because they'd kill me before I reached the press," Nadia said flatly. And because the people behind Blackstream aren't just businessmen, they're politicians, military officers, bankers. The ones you can't touch without burning your own name, he exhaled. Then what the hell am I supposed to do with this? She smiled faintly, a weary curve of her lips. Finish what he started. The world already thinks Richard Holley died in disgrace. That's your greatest weapon there, not looking for his legacy. Michael looked down at the drives. His father's ghost staring back in data, an ink. He planned all of this, he whispered. Even now, he's still moving the pieces, Nadja nodded. He left you the key. You were always meant to unlock it before he could respond. A faint noise echoed from the deck above metal, shifting. The sound of boots. Nadja's expression changed instantly. They found us. What? She slammed the case shut, thrusting one of the drives into his hands. Go! There's a maintenance hatch behind that crate leads to the engine corridor. From there, you can reach the lifeboat platform. Michael hesitated. What about you? She gave him a quick, hard look. I've been running for 10 years, Holley. I'm not running anymore. You are. The footsteps grew louder. Washu dead? In a language Michael couldn't make out. Nadja drew a pistol from her jacket. When you get out of here, go east. Find the man named Teranov. He worked with your father. He knows how to expose them safely. Tell him I sent you. Nadja, go. She turned toward the door just as it burst open. The flash of gunfire lit the cabin in white-hot bursts. Michael dove through the hatch, the sound of bullets echoing behind him. The heat of the engine corridor hit him like fire as he crawled through narrow pipes and steel beams, heart slamming in his chest. When he reached the outer deck, the night air struck his face, thick with smoke and the tongue of burning oil. He looked back once, saw the glow of flames rising from the cargo hold. Nadja was gone. He stumbled toward the lifeboats, clutching the drive like a lifeline. Behind him, the Valeria burned brighter, its reflection twisting across the black water. As he lowered the small boat into the waves, his phone buzzed again. One final message. No sender. ***, she bought you time. Don't waste it. RH***. Michael stared at the screen, salt and smoke stinging his eyes. His father's dead voice had reached him through the ashes of another life. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear, something in him hardened. Richard Holley had been ruined to hide the truth. Michael Holley would burn the world to expose it. The lifeboat drifted through the ink-black waters of the Mediterranean. The fiery wreck of the Valeria shrinking into the distance until it was just a faint orange pulse against the horizon. The cold bit into Michael's bones, but he didn't dare stop rowing. The drive was still, in his pocket, wrapped in a soaked piece of cloth, pressed against his chest like a second heart. He couldn't feel his fingers anymore, only the rhythmic push and pull of the oars. Every time he blinked, he saw Nadja's face the split second before the gunfire, her steady eyes that had already accepted what was coming. By dawn, he reached a small fishing port east of Toulon. The sea was calm now, deceptively peaceful. A few fishermen glanced his way, but said nothing. A man climbing out of a lifeboat in yesterday's clothes was no 1S business in these parts. He walked until he found a payphone outside a shuttered cafe, dug a handful of coins from his pocket, and stared at the keypad. *Teranov. That was the name Nadja had given him. A man who worked with your father, she'd said. The problem was, he had no idea who that was or where to find him. He took a deep breath and called Eva. The phone rang 3 times before she answered. Hello? Her voice was cautious, thin. It's me, Michael said quietly. I need your help. There was a pause. Michael, my God, where are you? Somewhere I shouldn't be. Listen, do you know a man named Teranov? He worked with my father. Ava's silence stretched for so long, he thought the line had gone dead. Then she whispered, yes, he's real. Russian. Used to be an intelligence officer before he went underground. Your father trusted him more than anyone. Do you know how to reach him? I have an address, she said slowly. But Michael, if you've found him, it means you've opened the box, hasn't it? The drive, the notebook, everything. Her exhale was shaky. Then it's already too late to stop. Go to Vienna. There's an old bookshop near the Danube called Volkov and Sons. That's where Teranov works now. Tell him I sent you. Before he could say anything more, Ava's voice changed. Sharper, quieter, Michael, are you alone right now? Yes. Why? Because if they tracked your father all those years ago, they'll track you faster. You need to assume they're already following. He looked around instinctively. The street was empty except for the rustle of gulls and the slow-moving tide. Somewhere I felt it of little eyes. I'll call you when I get there, he said. No, she replied firmly. Don't, not from any phone. He'll find you, if you use my name. Just get there alive. The line went dead. Vienna. It took him to days of buses, border crossings, and quiet paranoia to reach the city. He barely slept. He paid cash for everything, avoided cameras, switched trains whenever he could. The drive stayed hidden in the lining of his jacket. Every face in every station looked suspicious. Every reflection in every window felt like a warning. When he finally stepped into Vienna, the air was crisp, the streets buzzing with the quiet rhythm of a city that didn't care who lived or died. The Danube ran like a cold artery through its heart, grey and endless. He found Asterisk Volkov and Sons Asterisk tucked between to narrow streets lined with antique stores. Its windows were dusty, the wooden sign faded. Inside, the smell of old paper and tobacco filled the air. "Can I help you?" asked a voice from behind the counter. The man was in his 60s, tall but slightly stooped, with white hair combed, neatly back, and a pair of wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. "I'm looking for Taranov," Michael said. The man didn't flinch, didn't smile. "You found him?" Michael hesitated, then said softly, "Eva sent me. They got a reaction lifeboat platform." Michael hesitated. "What about you?" She gave him a quick, hard look. "I've been running for 10 years. Holly, I'm not running anymore." "You are." The footsteps grew louder. Voices shouted, in a language Michael couldn't make out. Nadja drew a pistol from her jacket. "When you get out of here, go east. Find the man named Taranov. He worked with your father. He knows how to expose them safely. Tell him I sent you. Nadja, go." She turned toward the door just as it burst open. The flash of gunfire lit the cabin in white-hot bursts. Michael dove through the hatch, the sound of bullets echoing behind him. The heat of the engine cadet himo fires he crawled through Nems, Erzlamin. In his chest. When he reached the outer deck, the night air struck his face, thick with smoke and the tongue of burning oil. He looked back once, saw the glow of flames rising from the cargo hold. Nadja was gone. He stumbled toward the lifeboats, clutching the drive like a lifeline. Behind him, the Valeria burned brighter, its reflection twisting. Across the black water. As he lowered the small boat into the waves, his phone buzzed again. One final message. No sender. "She bought you time. Don't waste it." R.H. Michael stared at the screen, salt and smoke stinging his eyes. His father's dead voice had reached him through the ashes of another life. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear, something in him hardened. Richard Holley had been ruined to hide the truth. Michael Holley would burn the world to expose it. The lifeboat drifted through the ink-black waters of the Mediterranean. The fiery wreck of the Valeria shrinking into the distance until it was just a faint orange pulse against the horizon. The cold bit into Michael's bones, but he didn't dare stop rowing. The drive was still in his pocket, wrapped in a soaked piece of cloth, pressed against his chest like a second heart. He couldn't feel his fingers anymore, only the rhythmic push and pull of the oars. Every time he blinked, he saw Nadja's face the split second before the gunfire, her steady eyes that had already accepted what was coming. By dawn, he reached a small fishing port east of Toulon. The sea was calm now, deceptively peaceful. A few fishermen glanced his way but said nothing. A man climbing out of a lifeboat in yesterday's clothes was no one's business in these parts. He walked until he found a payphone outside a shuttered cafe, dug a handful of coins from his pocket, and stared at the keypad. Taranov, that was the name Nadja had given him, a man who worked with your father, she'd said. The problem was, he had no idea who that was or where to find him. He took a deep breath and called Eva. The phone rang 3 times before she answered. "Hello." Her voice was cautious, thin. "It's me," Michael said quietly. "I need your help." There was a pause. "Michael." "My God, where are you?" "Somewhere I shouldn't be." "Listen, do you know a man named Taranov?" "He worked with my father." Ava's silence stretched for so long. He thought the line had gone dead. Then she whispered, "Yes, he's real. Russian. Used to be an intelligence officer before he went underground. Your father trusted him more than anyone. Do you know how to reach him?" "I have an address," she said slowly. "But Michael, if you found him, it means you've opened the box, hasn't it?" He hesitated. "Yeah, I saw the drive." "The notebook?" "Everything." Her exhale was shaky. "Then it's already too late to stop. Go to Vienna. There's an old bookshop near the Danube called Volkov and Sons. That's where Taranov works now. Tell him I sent you." Before he could say anything more, Ava's voice changed. Sharper. Quieter. "Michael, are you alone right now?" "Yes. Why?" "Because if they tracked your father all those years ago, they'll track you faster. You need to assume they're already following." He looked around instinctively. The street was empty except for the rustle of gulls and the slow-moving tide. "But I felt it through the blinds. I'll call you when I get there," he said. "No," she replied firmly. "Don't. Not from any phone. He'll find you if you use my name. Just get there alive." The line went dead. Vienna. It took him to days of buses, border crossings, and quiet paranoia to reach the city. He barely slept. He paid cash for everything, avoided cameras, switched trains whenever he could. The drive stayed hidden in the lining of his jacket. Every face in every station looked suspicious. Every reflection in every window felt like a warning. When he finally stepped into Vienna, the air was crisp. The streets buzzing with the quiet rhythm of a city that didn't care who lived or died. The Danube ran like a cold artery through its heart, grey and endless. Stefan Volkov engineer between wars. Its windows were dusty, the wooden sign faded. Inside, the smell of old paper and tobacco filled the air. "Can I help you?" asked a voice from behind the counter. The man was in his 60s, tall but slightly stooped, with white hair combed neatly back and a pair of wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. "I'm looking for Taranov," Michael said. The man didn't flinch, didn't smile. "You've found him." Michael hesitated, then said softly, "Eva sent me." That got a reaction. Taranov's eyes flickered with something recognition, maybe grief. "So, the boy finally surfaces," he said, motioning for Michael to follow him. "Come, we can't talk here." They passed through a back room lined with stacks of old books, then down a narrow stairwell that led to a basement. The air was colder there, the walls lined, not with books, but with file cabinets and maps. A small desk sat in the corner, littered with photographs, coded documents, and what looked like old intelligence dossiers. "She said you worked with." "My father," Michael said quietly. "I did," Taranov replied, pouring two glasses of whiskey. "Richard was smarter than most men I knew. Braver, too. He found things he wasn't supposed to find, and instead of selling them, he buried them." "Buried what?" Taranov took a slow sip before answering. "Names, locations, account numbers. A full record of every politician and corporation that profited off the Blackstream network. He called it the ledger." Michael frowned. "Then why didn't he give it to the authorities?" "Because the authorities were on the list," Taranov said. "Interpol. Federal agencies. Ministers. If he had released it, they'd have killed him before he could prove it existed." He gestured toward the bag slung over Michael's shoulder. "And now you have the final piece, don't you?" Michael unzipped the bag and laid the hard drive on the table. Taranov's expression darkened. "He told me you'd come someday. Said if the boy found this drive, it would mean the time had come to finish what he started." Michael leaned forward. "How?" "There's a server in Prague," Taranov said. "Hidden beneath a defunct data center. Your father and I built it years ago, a dead drop for the ledger. If you can decrypt what's on that drive and upload it there, it will go public automatically. Every network, every outlet, every government database. You won't be able to stop it once it starts." Michael swallowed hard. "And what happens to me?" Taranov smiled faintly, like a man who's seen too many endings. "You'll either disappear or become the most hunted man in the world." Before Michael could reply, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then went out. Taranov froze. "They're here." "Who?" The old man didn't answer. He pulled open a drawer, shoved a pistol into Michael's hand, and grabbed the hard drive. "Basement tunnel." Now, a crash echoed from above, glass shattering, boots hitting the floor. Michael's heart pounded as they ran down the narrow corridor, behind the file cabinets, ducking beneath pipes and exposed wiring. Voices shouted in German above them, urgent, military. They reached a steel door at the end of the tunnel. Taranov slammed it, shut behind them, and locked it. "Go to Prague," he said, pressing the drive. Back into Michael's hand, North Train Line. Compartment 7B. There's a contact, their name's Helene. She gets you through the border. What about you? Taranov's eyes softened, almost paternal. I made my peace years ago. Boy, go. Then the door exploded inward. Michael didn't look back. He ran. Bullets tore through the walls, the air thick with dust and shrapnel. Somewhere behind him, Taranov shouted something, maybe an order. Maybe a goodbye before the sound was swallowed by the concussive roar of another blast. Michael burst through the side exit into the night. Sirens wailed in the distance. The city lights shimmered through smoke. He kept running until his lungs burned, until the noise of pursuit faded behind him. When he finally reached the train station, dawn was breaking over Vienna. He bought a ticket to Prague with trembling hands and sank into his seat as the train pulled away. For the first time in his life, he understood his father completely. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about revelation truth buried so deep it cost lives to unearth. As trains sped north, Michael looked out at the passing fields and whispered under his breath, "You didn't die in debt, old man. You died trying to save us all, and somewhere inside him, a quiet resolve took shape. Whatever waited in Prague, whoever was left, he would see it through, even if it killed him." The border, crossing into the Czech Republic, was quiet, unnervingly so. The snow had started again, thin flakes drifting lazily past the train windows, softening the world outside to a dull blur of white. Michael sat motionless in his compartment, his fingers still wrapped around the hard drive hidden beneath his coat. Every stop, every uniformed guard that passed down the aisle made his heart stutter. When the train finally slowed outside Prague, the city spread before him. Like a grey mosaic, spires and domes piercing through mist, streets glistening under the weak morning sun. He'd memorized Taranov's words. Compartment 7B. Helene. He waited until most passengers had disembarked before stepping off the train. A cold wind cut across the platform, scattering old newspapers and cigarette ash. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman in a long, grey coat watched him closely. She didn't look like much mid-40s, pale, with dark hair pulled into a low bun. But when their eyes met, she nodded once. "Michael Holley," she said quietly as she approached. Her English carried a trace of Prague's rhythm, soft consonants, deliberate pauses. "You look exactly like your father described." Michael froze. "You knew him." "I worked with him," she said, "and with Taranov. Until Blackstream came for us." He swallowed hard. "Then you know what's on this drive." "I know what it could be," Helene said, motioning for him to follow. "But we can't talk here. Come." They left the station, through a side exit, and walked along the Vltava River, the air thick with the smell of cold stone and exhaust. The city was waking, slowly, shopkeepers unlocking doors, trams rumbling in the distance. Every few blocks, Helene glanced behind them. "You're being followed," she said. Softly, Michael's stomach tightened. "How do you know?" "Because I always am," she replied. They ducked into an old building near the river, a former printing press, by the look of it. Inside, the walls were lined with old machinery and faded posters from another century. Helene led him down a narrow staircase to a basement lined with servers, their faint hum filling the silence. "This was one of Richard's safe houses," she said. "He built it before he disappeared. No network tracing, no external lines. The upload terminal is still here." She gestured to a small console attached to the server cluster. "If the drive contains the ledger, this system will decrypt it. Once that happens, it'll automatically send the data to multiple channels, press outlets, human rights organizations. Encrypted drops. Everyone, everywhere." Michael stared at the console. His father's final plan, the one he died protecting, was sitting inches from realization. And yet something in him hesitated. Helene noticed. "You're afraid." He nodded. "If this goes public, people die. My family, they'll be targets. They already are." She said quietly, "Do you think Blackstream will let you live if you walk away?" He met her eyes. There was no malice in them, only truth. Michael took a deep breath and set the hard drive on the console. What do I need to do? Helene inserted the drive, her fingers moving with practiced precision. The screen flickered, displaying lines of encrypted code. He used a multilayer key encryption. Itegates Noah. Password, it's a sequence. Something personal. Michael frowned. Personal how? Something only you would know, she said. He must have meant for you to open it, he thought back Zurich. The notebook, the videos. Words his father had written, if you're smart enough to unlock it. Etiped. First came to Kameling's names. Accesdenia he tried to give Ividania. Accesdenia he rubbed trying to think. Then it hit him the phrase Richard had whispered to him as a child whenever things went wrong. When his mother screamed and the house felt like a battlefield. Family isn't who shares your blood, he murmured. It's who shares your truth. He typed, truth over our blood. The console beeped once, then the screen flashed green. Helene exhaled. He really did trust you. The files began decrypting, thousands of them. Cascading across the screen. Financial ledgers, internal memos, offshore, wire transfers, photos of politicians shaking hands with men in uniforms. It was massive, sprawling, years of hidden corruption laid bare. And then, as if the system itself hesitated, a new folder appeared. FNA message. Michael opened it. Inside was a single video file. For underscore, Michael.mp for he clicked it. His father appeared on screen again, older now, pale, filmed from a hospital bed. The oxygen tube under his nose trembled as he breathed. Michael, Richard said softly. If you're watching this, then you've done it. You've come farther than I ever hoped you would. And now you have to choose. He coughed, the sound brittle. That drive doesn't just expose Blackstream, it exposes everyone tied to it. Including the company, including our name. Once it goes live, there's no saving the Hales. The world will see me as the man who built a criminal empire before. Burning it down, Michael's chest tightened. But if you stop the upload, Richard continued, then everything I did, everything I gave up dies with me. The people I couldn't save will stay forgotten. Eva, Daniel, Nadia, all of them. You'll be safe, but the truth will vanish. He paused, looking straight into the camera. His eyes, sunken but steady, still carried the weight of command. I never wanted you to live in my shadow. But every man eventually faces the same choice. Protect his name or redeem his soul. The screen went black. Helene turned to him. The transfer is ready. Once I hit execute, the world will know. But it has to be your call. Michael stared at the blinking cursor. His family's name, his father's legacy. The ghosts of men and women who had vanished into containers and balance sheets. He saw Nadia's face again, the scar, the fire. He heard Teranov's voice, calm even as the world burned around him. He thought of Eva, somewhere far away, still carrying the weight of secret she never asked to bear. And he thought of Richard Hale, the man who had died so the truth could live. Michael stepped forward. Eon did Shake's time. Do it. Helene nodded once, then pressed the key. The servers roared to life. The screens filled with motion data, streaming outward in all directions, mirrored across countless nodes and hidden pathways. The world began to wake. Somewhere, headlines would soon start flashing across screens. Global trafficking. Network exposed. Political figures implicated. Holly Corporation under fire. Michael stood silently, watching it unfold, feeling both hollow and whole at once. Then the basement lights flickered. Helene frowned. They found the signal trace before she could finish. The door above them burst open. Gunfire. Shouts in check. Michael dove behind the servers as bullets ripped through the walls. Helene returned fire, the flash from her pistol lighting the room in staccato bursts. Run! She shouted. It's done, the data's gone. Michael grabbed the last drive and sprinted toward the maintenance tunnel. The air filled with smoke and dust, screams blending with the shriek of metal. He reached the stairwell just as another explosion tore through the floor, throwing him against the wall. The last thing he saw before blacking out was Helene, still firing, a single fierce silhouette against the burning light. He woke hours later, in a back alley. The snow melted into dirty water around him. His head throbbed. Sirens wailed somewhere distant. The drive was gone, but it didn't matter. The upload was complete. He staggered to his feet and looked up. Across the city, giant screens in shop windows were already flashing the news. Names, numbers, headlines his father's face. Richard Hulley, the man who died to tell the truth. Michael smiled through the ache in his ribs. Somewhere, somehow, his father's ghost was finally at peace. But as he turned down the street, a black car slowed beside him. The window rolled down. A voice, calm and familiar, spoke from within. Monsieur Arl, you've made quite the mess. He froze. The speaker leaned into the light. It was his sister, Carolyn. She smiled faintly. Jane, we need to talk about what you just unleashed. Caroline's voice was velvet dipped in steel. Smooth but cold, the kind that had always been able to silence a room with a single syllable. The last time Michael had seen her, she'd been screaming at their father's lawyer during the bankruptcy hearings, calling Richard Hulley a disgrace, a lunatic, a fraud. Now, she sat in the back of a black Mercedes with tinted windows, dressed in an immaculate charcoal coat, calm as a winter morning. Get in, Michael, she said again, her tone neither pleading nor threatening, just certain. He hesitated on the curb, dripping from melted snow, clothes torn, blood dried against his collar. The city behind him still pulsed with sirens and flickering blue lights. He could see the reflection of the headlines in passing windows. Hulley Corporation, under investigation. Global conspiracy exposed. Trafficking network linked to world leaders. He had done it. The truth was out. But somehow, seeing her there, perfectly composed amid the chaos, he felt like a pawn who just realized the game wasn't over. Get in, she repeated, softer now. Delphonic Klinkelbedin. The car door closed with the sound of finality. Inside, it smelled faintly of leather and perfume. Carolyn studied him for a long moment, eyes flicking over his face. You look like hell. Thanks, he muttered. She poured something amber into a glass and handed it to him. You'll need this. He didn't drink it. How did you find me? A small smile curved her lips. You're not as good at disappearing as you think. You left a trail of burned cities and behind you. Zurich, Marseille, Vienna. She leaned back, regarding him like a scientist watching an experiment. Honestly, I didn't think you'd get this far, but I suppose our father underestimated you too. Michael turned toward her fully. You knew about him. About Blackstream, of course I did. The words hit him like a slap. What? She sipped her drink, unbothered. You think I never asked questions when the money vanished? When his company imploded overnight? I was part of it long before he was Michael. I was the one who convinced Uncle Robert to fund the maritime expansions in the first place. I just didn't realize what we were moving until it was too late. He stared at her, stunned. You were involved. Carolyn tilted her head. Not in the way you think. I didn't traffic anyone, but I signed the papers. I approved shipments. I moved the money. So, when Father turned on US, when he made it all disappear, he wasn't protecting the family. He was erasing our guilt. His little redemption story. Michael's pulse quickened. You're lying. Am I? She said softly. Because right now, the entire world believes the Hales were either victims or heroes, and that lie is your doing. You think you exposed the truth, but all you did was release chaos. Those files didn't just implicate politicians and brokers. Michael, they implicated corporations, defense contractors, foreign governments. People who won't stop until every trace of that data and everyone connected to it is wiped clean. She leaned closer, her voice lowering to a hiss. And now, they think you are the one holding the originals. He shook his head. The data's out. It's everywhere. No, she said, her eyes narrowing. What you uploaded was a partial release. A mirror. The real ledger, the one with the names that matter, is still locked behind your father's encryption. You have a piece of it, Michael, maybe without even knowing it. And they'll burn cities to find it. He froze. I don't have anything left. The drive was destroyed in Prague. Carolyn smiled, too calmly. Then what's this? She tapped appeared a satellite photo. Grainy, but clear enough to recognize him staggering through the Prague alley where he'd woken. The time stamp was less than 6 hours old. His jacket bulged slightly on the left side. The same side where he'd hidden the secondary USB key Richard had given. Him in the Zurich locker, the one he'd forgotten he even had. Michael's stomach dropped. Don't look so surprised. Carolyn said, he left you a breadcrumb, not a prize. That key contains the master decryption, the real ledger. You have no idea what it's worth. Then why tell me this? He asked quietly. She turned away, staring out at the passing streets. Because they're coming for you, and because I might still care whether you live long enough to understand what he did to us. The car turned sharply, entering a tunnel beneath the river. The air inside was close, humming with the echo of the engine. Where are we going? Michael asked. Somewhere, sir, Caroline said, for the deliver. There was something too controlled in her tone, too rehearsed. You're working for them, he said. Caroline returned immediately. Then, with the faintest sigh, I'm working for myself. The difference doesn't matter anymore. The tunnel lights flickered. A black SUV appeared in the rearview mirror, closing fast. Caroline cursed under her breath. They're here sooner than I thought. Who? Blackstream's reclamation unit, she said. They call themselves Division 9 now. Their job is to erase evidence, sound witnesses. Gunfire cracked behind them. The back window exploded. Caroline jerked the wheel hard, swerving into a maintenance lane. Jedon. Bullets shattered the rear, glass as the car fishtailed. Michael ducked, the world turning into a blur of light and sound. Caroline hit a hidden switch on the dashboard, and metal shutters slammed down over the windows. The car roared forward, tires screeching against the concrete. Do you have the key? She shouted. Michael reached instinctively into his coat. The cold metal of the U.S. be pressed against his palm. Yes, then listen to me, she said through gritted teeth. There's a man in London named Rafe Morgan. He used to work with Father Finance, Counter-Intel. He can decrypt the ledger. If you get to him first, you might survive long enough to finish what our father started. And you? She gave a humorless smile. I'll hold them off. Before he could protest, she slammed on the brakes. The car spun sideways, skidding to a stop. She shoved the passenger door open. Go, now. There's an emergency. Exit 50 meters ahead. Maintenance tunnel leads to the surface. Caroline, go, damn it. Michael ran. The moment he hit the tunnel door, an explosion ripped through the air. The car behind him was engulfed in flame, the sound deafening. He stumbled forward, coughing, the world spinning in smoke and heat. When he finally eluked back, nothing left sated. For a moment, he stood frozen. Then he turned and kept walking, the USB still clenched in his hand. London, Rafe Morgan, the final key. He had no idea if Caroline was alive, no idea how many were still coming after him. But somewhere deep down, beneath the exhaustion and grief, something hardened. This wasn't just about finishing his father's work anymore. This was about ending everyone's, and as he vanished into the night, the city behind him burned with the truth his family had spent generations trying to bury. Michael arrived in London on a cold, colourless dawn that felt more like the memory of a morning than a real one. The Thames shimmered under a dull sky, the air heavy with fog and secrets. He hadn't slept in days, not since the explosion in the Prague tunnel. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Caroline's face, the flicker of light against her glassy calm, the way she didn't look back when she told him to run. He didn't know if she was dead. Maybe she wasn't. Maybe she was somewhere, watching from the shadows like their father used to, always one step ahead. One lie away from the truth. All he knew was that the world had changed. Headlines had exploded across every screen and paper. Blackstream exposed. World leaders implicated in global trafficking ring. The Holly legacy from power to redemption. Governments denied. Stock markets fell, and a quiet panic spread through every boardroom that had once thought itself untouchable. Anonymous sources whispered about whistleblowers vanishing, investigators dying. In accidents, the world was unraveling, and in the chaos, Richard Hale's name had become myth. But the story wasn't finished. Not yet. Michael took the underground to a place called Millhaven, an industrial district that reeked of iron and old smoke. He followed the directions Caroline had given him, an address scrawled in her handwriting, half-burned around the edges. It led to a warehouse hidden behind a scrapyard, its windows dark, its walls thick with graffiti and time. He hesitated at the door before knocking twice. A voice from inside said, "You're late." The door opened. Rafe Morgan was not what Michael expected. The man looked like someone who'd already been erased once, grey, hair cropped short. Eyes sharp but weary, the kind of calm that only came from surviving too much. He wore a wool coat and fingerless gloves, and in his hands was a cup of black tea that steamed in the cold. "You look like your father," Rafe said, stepping aside. "Same eyes, same damn stubbornness. You knew him?" Michael asked. "I built the first layer of his empire," Rafe replied. "And I helped him bury it when he realized what it had become." Michael pulled the small USB from his pocket. "This is the key." Rafe's eyes flicked to it. "So it's true. He really left it to you." He motioned toward a table lined with old computers and tangled cables. "Let's see what ghosts we're chasing." Michael handed it over. Rafe plugged it in, his fingers moving with mechanical precision. For several minutes, there was only silence save for the hum of old machines. Then, slowly, a file directory appeared. Rafe's expression changed. "Well, I'll be damned. What is it?" "The final ledger," he murmured. "The unredacted version. Every name your father ever found, every shell company, every offshore transfer. Not just Blackstream, but its parent networks, government contractors, intelligence assets, CEOs. It's everything." Michael stared at the screen. He said once I'd have to choose between protecting the family or redeeming the soul. Rafe glanced at him. "Then you already know what he'd want you to do." Michael nodded. "Send it all." Rafe hesitated. "Once I hit this, there's no stopping it. Every government on that list will hunt you. You'll never have peace again." Michael gave a small, tired smile. "Peace is for people who get to forget." "I don't." Rafe looked at him for a long time before nodding. He pressed enter. The system began to hum louder. Data cascaded across the screen, strings of code, encryption keys, email chains, bank records. Servers across the world began lighting up one by one as the network mirrored the upload, bouncing between continents like a heartbeat in code. When it was done, the screen went black. Then a single line appeared. "Hello, Michael." "You did it." Rafe frowned. "What is this?" Michael stepped closer. The word shifted. "I knew you'd find Rafe. I knew you'd finish it. If you're seeing this, it means you've finally freed us all from our names, our lies, our silence." It was his father's voice. The words were appearing as if typed in real time, each one carrying that steady, familiar rhythm. "The world will hate you for this, but someday they'll understand. Remember what I told you when you were a boy. Truth isn't gentle. It breaks before it builds." The final words appeared slowly. "You made me proud. Son, now disappear." The screen went dark again. Michael stood there, frozen. His chest ached not from fear this time, but from the unbearable weight of love and loss mixed into one final message. Rafe put a hand on his shoulder. "You should go. By now, they've traced the transmission. You've got hours, maybe less." Michael nodded. He picked up his coat and turned to leave. "Where will you go?" Rafe asked. He paused at the door. "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can remember who I was before all of this." As he stepped out into the London fog, the first sirens began to wail in the distance. Helicopters thudded faintly overhead, the city's heartbeat quickening as the truth rippled through the world like a storm breaking open the sky. By the time the police reached the warehouse, there was no trace of him, only the hum of cooling servers and a single note left on the table, written in a hand that looked achingly like Richard Hale's. It read, "They thought I died in debt. They were wrong. I died free, and now so does the truth." Months later, in a small coastal village in southern Spain, a woman named Eva received a letter postmarked with no return address. Inside was a photograph of a man standing on a beach at dawn, his face turned away, the tide lapping at his feet. On the back, a few words were scrawled in pencil. "Tell Daniel I'm all right." The truth finally found its home. She pressed the photo to her chest, eyes closed, and whispered into the quiet air, "You did it, Richard." You both did. Far away, the morning sun climbed over the horizon, painting the sea gold. Somewhere along that same coastline, a man walked alone, hands in his pockets, watching the world turn. He had no name now, no fortune, no family left in the public eye. But, for the first time in generations, the Holley legacy wasn't built on lies or money. It was built on truth. And that, finally, was enough. He died clutching that damned box, his fingers stiff and pale, the wood smudged with the oils of his obsession. Inside were the watches, every last one of them ticking softly like mechanical heartbeats mocking him. 47 timepieces, glinting beneath the sterile morgue light. Each one engraved with a story he thought he owned, each one a symbol of trust, love, and betrayal. But not a single one was real. $4 million had bought him nothing but lies, and I was the one who sold them to him. It wasn't always meant to be this way. When I met Richard Holley, I was still playing small. A counterfeit dealer. Yes, but a careful one. I started with sneakers, handbags, jewelry, things the rich bought to feel important and the poor bought to look rich. My name's Adrian. I don't pretend to be moral. I learned early that in a world built on appearances, deception is just another form of art. My father sold fake stamps out of his basement. My mother faked her orgasms and her smiles. Honesty wasn't something we inherited. It was something we faked better than others. I met Richard at an auction in Geneva. I'd slipped in under the name A. Marchand, posing as a collector's agent. He was seated in the front row, his silver hair immaculate, his tailored navy suit hugging a body that spoke of wealth maintained through fear rather than discipline. He didn't look at people. He inspected them like watches under glass. When he raised his hand to bid on a vintage Patek Philippe, his cuff shifted, revealing a thin, gold wristwatch that gleamed with understated arrogance. I knew it immediately. A 1952 Patek 2499, or at least a flawless replica of one. After the auction, I followed him to the hotel bar. He was sipping a glass of neat bourbon, scanning the room like a man perpetually expecting admiration. I slid onto the stool beside him. "You overpaid for that brigade," I said casually. His head turned, slow as a clock's minute hand. His eyes narrowed. "Excuse me." "The brigade," I said, swirling my drink. "That particular model was restored with third-party components. The balance wheel's not original. You paid for a lie." His frown deepened. "And you are someone who hates to see a good collector get played." I smiled. "Adrien Marchand de Nick? Italwedid." It sounded European, cultured, someone with access. He studied me for a moment, then offered a tight nod. "Richard Holley," he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm, but his eyes flickered with curiosity. That was all I needed. That night, I laid the first thread of the web. Over drinks and cigars, I told him about my clients, the discreet collectors who traded in rare, unlisted pieces, items never meant for auction houses. I dropped names like Betrayal, Defunct Swiss Ateliers, or the kind of mythology that men like Richard couldn't resist. He was entranced. Off-market, you say? Et murmured. Unregistered. Precisely, I said. Pieces that never passed through public hands. Priceless.